class. Today's topic of the master class is dimension of narrative in science documentaries and short films. And we are lucky enough that we have with us Ms Akanksha Damini Joshi, senior filmmaker and cinematographer from New Delhi. And I will uh, Ms. Akanksha Damini Joshi is an international award-winning filmmaker, writer, and cinematographer. She has a diverse storytelling range, portraying India in its social, political, ecological, cultural, and spiritual dimensions. Over 2 decades, she has documented natural disasters, social conflicts, environmental strifts, and spiritual philosophical tradition of India. Some of her award winning films are Earth Witness on climate change, told through various indigenous tribes in different ecological zones of India. Chilka Banks tracking ecological changes over 4 decades in India's largest coastal lake. The Hindu Nectar spiritual wandering in India experiences with seekers from various nations who has found their spiritual home in India. And friends, I do want to mention you that I'm a big fan of Chilka Banks and the Hindu Nectar. I had watched both the films. Hindu Nectar is for the Ministry of External Affairs, ma'am. Am I right?
That's correct.
Yes, it's a beautiful film, friends. If you go to YouTube and if you type Hindu Nectar, or if you go to the Ministry of External Affairs channel
Indian
in YouTube,
diplomacy.
yes, Indian diplomacy, you will find this film. You must watch this film. And Chilka Bank is a remarkable film. We had. I have seen it so many times, and it's there. It has been produced by PSBT,
Yes.
and it's well talked about film. So it's a request for me. You must watch these two films today after the master class.
Certainly.
Again, back. Over the last decades, Akanksha has been facilitating conflict resolution and mediation groups anchored in various wisdom traditions of India. And you can follow her on Facebook on that is www.facebook.com/Damini Josh official. It's not Joshi, it's Damini Josh, Josh official. So, Akanksha ji, a very warm welcome in the master class,
Thank you.
and um, uh, we are really lucky enough to have you. So, you will be talking about dimension of narratives in science documentaries and short films. But before you start your session, I have a question from you. Like you had a most of the filmmakers, they set their subject, like they are either a green filmmaker or a rights based filmmaker or a spiritual filmmaker or a social filmmaker, science filmmaker. But I had seen as and as I already mentioned that I have seen your videos, you had a command in every subject. All the either it's Chilka Bank or it's Hindu Nectar or other films. So how this journey became, and why don't you decided to be in a certain subject rather than talking about all these various subjects, although you are as good as in every subject, so there is no question about that. But how your journey started, why you wanted to become a filmmaker, what was the thing that leads you to in the filmmaking thing, and why you don't uh, uh, stood a specific subject, ma'am.
Um, so, if I can answer your question this way, Mr. Sabyasachi, that's a very beautiful question to ask, and very thoughtful. You've thought about this. That's why you're asking this. So that speaks a lot about you. Uh, it's like life. Uh, the word that we use in academic language is multidisciplinary.
Yeah.
Uh, when you uh, when you see life, uh, if you just pick on one particular aspect of life, you're missing out on a lot more. Uh, I think when you choose different aspects of your learning, sometimes you learn from seeing the tree for the beauty of it. Sometimes you learn from from seeing the tree deeply at a microscopic level, understanding the processes, the absolute wonderment which makes the tree a tree. Sometimes you see the tree for the oxygen which it's giving you, so much of nourishment. Sometimes you understand it for the medicines which it is offering to you, the herbal tonics which is offering to you. So you see the tree of life in its entirety, and sometimes you see the tree of life as a space where you sit under it and narrate a story or listen to a story. So life, if I can summarize what I'm trying to say, is life as it exists is multidimensional. A person like me is a student of life. So if I choose just one aspect of life, I will be missing out on the 360-degree context that life offers to me. I will be less richer as a student. So I like to cross disciplines. I like to learn from different fields and enrich myself as a student of life. That is why.
Wow, wonderful. Before I hand over stage to you, one request to all these attendees: you can please don't write your name and your email ID, all these things, but please do write your questions here. And at the end of the session, Akanksha ji will try to answer all these questions. So, ma'am, up to you, ma'am.
Sure. So, dimensions of narrative in science, documentaries, and short films. The reason why you and me are together on this is that I guess, we have two things in common. We are both interested in storytelling, and we are both interested in science. But ordinarily, what happens is that stories are seen as stories and science is seen as science. What could be the common grounds between these two? In fact, let's say what all could be the common grounds between them. In the next hour or so, you and me, we will explore the dimensions of storytelling in science. For that is what the word narrative actually means. It comes from a Latin root, narrate, to tell. Stories of science, let's say, with all the flavors, the masalas of storytelling. Garma garam, hot, meetha meetha, sweet, spicy, and also bitter, for as your mom would have told you that like Karela, it's very good for health. Huh? So I want to begin with a short clip I have edited for you from a pitch film I made on what is one of the most disruptive innovation taking place in India as we speak. The most disruptive after, you can say, the charkha of Gandhiji. Incidentally, did you know that by the time Gandhiji imagined Swadeshi,
Ma'am,
the,
sorry to disturb you.
sorry,
The sound is very low. So many participants are saying that I received few calls also. So can you increase the sound a little bit?
the sound to be increased. Now let's just see how we can increase the sound. Hang on. Sorry for the okay. Is this the sound is low? Okay.
Yes.
Now I'm just going to try this. Now you tell me, is
Yes.
the sound any better?
Yeah, much better, ma'am.
Much better?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So
Yes.
shall we go ahead from which point? Should we take up from the disruptive innovation?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So what I'm going to speak about is from a short clip which I have edited for you. This was a pitch film which I had made on what I consider to be the most disruptive innovation taking place in India today. since the disruption which Gandhiji did through his charkha. So I was wondering if you remember and if you know that by the time Gandhiji imagined Swadeshi, the traditional charkha we see him with, at one time, which was a highly successful technical tool in many Indian households, by the time Gandhiji imagined that, the charkha had all but vanished. In fact, Gandhiji, with the help from Indian women, had to re-innovate, redesign, and reintroduce the charkha. Hamare dhage, hamare kapda, hamare haath, Swadeshi, Atmanirbhar, right? Now, Mahatma Gandhi revived the charkha. And I want you to understand that it's a technological disruption of that time. For the basis of industrial revolution, the British cotton mills were destroying the entire village ecology of cotton in India. At one time, we were exporting cotton clothes to Europe. You'd remember that. In fact, in 1700 and 1721, the Calico Acts in England banned the import of most of the cotton textiles into England. There were restrictions on the sales of most of the cotton textiles. And this was largely in response to India, which dominated the world cotton textile markets at that time. We had that kind of technology. These acts were a precursor to industrial revolution, when Britain eventually surpassed India as the world's leading textile manufacturer in the 19th century. This is the context which I'm setting. And incidentally, just to set the record straight about science as well, did you know that as late as the 1700s, many Europeans imagined that the cotton plant looked something like this? Let me just share a little slide with you. Okay, now share sound and optimize for video clip. Take a look at what was imagined by many Europeans that a cotton plant looked like. Do you see this? They imagined that the cotton plant looked like this. There is a lamb which grew on top of the plant.
Whoa.
Can you see this? And this is a poem which I'm sharing by a certain doctor in 1791, which says, upon a stalk is fixed a living brute, a rooted plant bears quadrupled for fruit. It is an animal that sleeps by the day and wakes at night, though rooted in the ground to feed on grass within its reach around. So this is just to set the record straight in case you're thinking that India lagged behind in its science. We had incredible technology. You all would remember the Dhaka ka Malmal, to name one thing, the kind of Zardozi work we had, the kind of, you can see the embroidery work we had. Now, all of this comes under the understanding of science, of technology. The handicrafts are not just handicrafts, there is a technique behind them.
Yes.
And the natural dyeing which India had. Yeah. If you read any of the works of Dharampalji, you will see Indian Sciences and Technology, where he talks about smallpox inoculation and how India already was inoculating people, a knowledge which transferred to the Middle East, Turkey, and then further to Europe from there. We already had inoculation in India. Our astronomy was another level altogether. And we also had the art, most interestingly, of making ice, which is something which the British learned from us. They studied us, you know.
Wow.
So if you want to revisit and see the indigenous sciences which already exists, there's a plethora of them. So coming back to our, just give me a second, coming back to our cotton mills, the process which started when the British ruled us, see, they wanted to finish off the cotton production there, right? So the industrial revolution ki process kya thi? It starts from there.
The cotton from the Indian villages was baled up, made really tight, compressed, and went to UK. There, the yarn, the thread was spun, the clothes were made, and those were imported back into India to be sold to us at much higher costs. We, the poor Indians, were buying those manufactured things. 1947, the British went away, but this process remained. The place where the cotton was being grown still had absolutely no control over the process, which is the village. From the village, still the cotton goes to the cities, it goes to the mills, and it travels. So the cotton has to be drastically compressed, baled up. Back in the mills, it is blown up. It destroys its texture, creates a lot of, well, takes a lot of earth breaths, what you call carbon footprints. Not to mention that the farmers or the village folks have absolutely no benefit. They sell the cotton for less, buy the clothes for more. Now, what could be yarn production, value addition, an additional source of income to farming does not exist still after so many years of independence. Then there are issues of migration. People have to leave their village, come to the city and live crazy lives. Now, we all saw this during the Corona time, right? The migrant labor. I guess in short, you get the picture and the context of this. The big mills are not good, energy guzzling. But the good old charkha, the question comes, can we not put the charkha back in the villages like Gandhiji did? It's been 100 years, huh? The times have changed.
Yeah.
The gentle, slow process of the charkha, few people have patience left with. Speed is now of essence, even in the villages. No one is going to go back anymore. So, between the, let's say, the super kind charkha and the energy monster mill, a hybrid solution had to be innovated upon. A solution that meant disrupting of the old colonial era technology, which is the mill. After decades of innovation, conscious innovation involving all kinds of people across villages, communities, traditions, a small machine, let's say a small integrated system, microspin was created. An innovation that made India truly Atmanirbhar, where every cotton growing village or region has the capability to export fresh from the farm cotton shirts, jeans, what have you. That's what's happening with microspin today. Their machines have been put up in Nepal, Philippines. They're innovating even further to mix a variety of fibers with cotton. You know, like you mix one fiber of cotton, you mix wool, you mix even pineapple fibers. You know, take a look what I've created. This is a spliced up version. So in between, you'll feel a little bit of a music or visual joke. I've just kept it short for this lecture. Okay, so I'm going to get onto screen sharing now. So, all right. Quick time player. Okay. Sabyasachi, you can let me know if there's any problem with the sound.
Yeah, certainly.
भी स्मार्ट हुई ना? क्यों नहीं? So this is happening in our country as we speak, where literally so many people have come together from the field of business, from the field of science, from the field of innovation, from the field of social science, where a conscious technology which is aware of its politics, a science which is aware of the background that science comes from, is is uh, is creating options in villages for people alternate to farming income. I think that's an incredible story which is taking place, uh, which has taught me a lot. This new age science which is emerging from India with sensitivity for tradition values of inclusive growth based on cooperation among weavers, artisans, teachers, activists, social scientists, scientists, students and lovers of India from all kinds of fields. What Kannan, I would call him the scientist father from IIT Madras of this innovation, incidentally, I must share with you, has also innovated and created India's own ATM machine. It's called the gram teller. The conventional ATMs, okay, what we use, they use AC. Why? Because they get hot. Why? Because the notes come from down to up on a conveyor belt, which uses a lot of energy. So Kannan, who is also called Pila, which means the storyteller, the yarn spinner, he tells a lot of stories, by the way. He thought that why not have the notes, instead of coming up, drop down using gravity. Simple energy, drop down. And you have it. The gram teller, Hamara Swadeshi ATM, which uses the energy which is already available of gravity. It cuts the carbon footprint and the energy usage hugely. What an idea, Sarji, huh? So now, in the spirit of spinning yarns, let us spin our own yarn on the dimension of telling a story, spinning a yarn. Mota moti, kacha pakka, we will be looking at 5 dimensions of the science storytelling. It is inspired by the folks who do science, the folks who do innovations. Let us say a storyteller's version of scientific temper. Now, the first dimension, Anubhav Karta, the experiencer. The fundamental dimension of narrative, like that of any scientific investigation, discovery, is you. Are you passionate about what you're doing? Are you having fun? Are you delighting in it? Are you willing to commit your precious life to it? Because you can only tell a story in the spirit of the subject of your story. I repeat and listen to me carefully. You can only tell a story in the spirit of the subject of your story. And the spirit of science is passion, is delight, is humongous enthusiasm. I'm going to play you a video. Take a look and listen with your ears open to this legendary physicist. Over to Richard Feynman. Let's hear him. Yes, that's him. No, I'm on another screen. Yes, sorry. Give me a second. Yep, got it. Richard Feynman, ladies and gentlemen. Over to him.
It's interesting that some people find science so easy and others find it kind of dull and difficult. Especially kids, some of them are just eat it up. And I don't know why it is. It's the same perhaps for all subjects. For instance, lots of people love music and I never could carry a tune. And I lose a great deal of pleasure out of that. And I think people lose a lot of pleasure who find science dull. In the case of science, I think that one of the things that make it very difficult is it takes a lot of imagination. It's very hard to imagine all the crazy things that things really are like. Nothing's really as it seems. We're used to get, hot and cold, and all that hot and cold is the speeds that the atoms are jiggling. If they jiggle more, it corresponds to hotter, and colder is jiggling less. So if you have a bunch of atoms, a cup of coffee or something sitting on a table, and the atoms are jiggling a great deal in the coffee, and they bounce against the cup, and the cup then gets shaking, and the atoms in the cup shake, and they bounce against the saucer, and the heat heats the cup and heats everything else. And hot thing spreads its heat into other things by mere contact, because the atoms that are jiggling a lot in the hot thing shake the ones that are jiggling only a little bit in the cold thing, so that the hot heat, we say, goes into the cold thing. It spreads. But what's spreading is just jiggling and irregular motions. This picture of atoms is a beautiful one that you can keep looking at all kinds of things this way. You see a little drop of water, a tiny drop. And the atoms attract each other. They like to be next to each other. They want as many partners as they can get. Now, the guys that are at the surface have only partners on one side here, in the air on the other side, so they're trying to get in. And you can imagine this team of people, these teeming people, all moving very fast, all trying to have as many partners as possible. And the guys at the edge are very unhappy and nervous, and they keep pounding in, trying to get in, and that makes it a tight ball instead of a flat. And that's what, surface tension, the way when you realize, when you see how sometimes a water drop sits like this on a table. I find myself trying to imagine all kinds of things all the time, and I get a kick out of it, just like a runner gets a kick out of sweating. I get a kick out of thinking about these things. I can't stop. And that's kind of a lot of fun to think about. I don't want to take this stuff seriously. I think we should just have fun imagining it, not worry about it. There's no teacher going to ask you questions at the end. Otherwise, it's a horrible subject.
It's a lot of fun. So when we look at science storytelling, if the scientists are having so much of fun as storytellers, if you are serious about it and taking it like some bhari bharkam kaam, I think your story is not going in the spirit of science. I repeat, Mr. Feynman, he says, I don't want to take this stuff too seriously. Did you catch his enthusiasm? Incidentally, for those of you who may not be aware, he is a Nobel laureate and legendary physicist. So did you notice there is another word which he uses very often? He says, imagine. This is what I have seen Indian innovators like even Kannan do. An incredible playfulness, childlike openness to explore, to make mistakes, to learn from them, to move on. As a storyteller of science, that spirit of playfulness is essential. How do you tell a story? It could be from so many perspectives. Like the film which Mr. Sabyasachi was mentioning, Chilika Bank, much awarded. Just one second, I think there's somebody whose microphone is open. Mr. Sabyasachi, can we just turn off all the other microphones because I'm getting another sound? Yeah, I think it's fine. The Chilika film, which he was talking about, largest coastal lake, some 40 years of ecological degradation in the lake I covered. the main protagonist of the film, the teller of the storyteller, is a banyan tree that stood by the lake. Why not? Why can a tree not talk? It just depends upon what you consider a language. If you ask science, it will give you a response. Trees do talk. So the fundamental dimension is fun. It's playfulness, which requires, mind you, your total presence, your passionate and full commitment. And from that emerges our second dimension of science storytelling, which is Kalpana Shakti, or the power to imagine. In the words of another scientist, another mathematician I love, Jacob Bronowski, Polish British mathematician, he says very beautifully, I'll just put that for you. He says, many people believe that reasoning and therefore science is a different activity from imagining. But this is a fallacy. Reasoning is constructed with movable images, just as certainly as poetry is. Now, I'm going to play a short video I have clipped for you with Bronowski's insights into both enjoyment and imagination, which is a fundamental dimension of scientific, and I would say definitely a storytelling temperament. Let's go with Mr. Bronowski. Okay, that's the way. Comes off, and that's the one. That for you is the incredible Mr. Bronowski.
Do you find, Dr. Bronowski, that people are frightened of talking to you in the sense that they're a bit overawed by your reputation and your presence?
I have one very great advantage. I don't regard it personally as an advantage, but in being approachable. You see, I'm much smaller than people think. So that people stop in the street and they look at me and they say quite involuntarily, "Oh, you're much smaller than I thought you were." That's a great icebreaker. I enjoy everything. I don't have to hide from you the fact that I would be enjoying this conversation even if you're a pretty girl.
I'm not sure that I would, but...
I have been fortunate in just having immense enjoyment of life, and happily I enjoy what are called intellectual pursuits marginally more than mere physical pursuits. I should like you to be a pretty intelligent girl. The only pleasure of being a scientist is that nature produces all these wonderful complications from such marvelous, simple devices, about which the most marvelous thing is that the human brain is actually capable of understanding.
An eminent authority, your wife, no less, I think, once described you as having a mind that could see round corners. Was she right? And if so, what does that mean?
I think she's right in saying that I have a strongly visual mind. That is to say, that I think of every problem as having a shape. I visualize every problem. And I suppose you could say round corners in the sense that all human abilities are thinking ahead to things which are not already present to the vision. We think in images. The word imagination means that. Yes, I'm a good imaginative thinker in the very simple sense of working with images. I should give you a practical example of that. I was in Japan in 1945, and the very first thing that struck me when I arrived in Japan was that the people were always small. You know, the Japanese in 1945, having been starved through years of war, were so small that when the men came to take our luggage off the plane, I thought they were schoolboys. Well, that made a great impression on me, but it's not an impression of little men running around and big men. By Japanese standards, I was quite a big man. Big men.
Nobody stopped you in the street over there?
No.
No.
No. But I had once had the vision of there being a sort of mountain of Japanese size and a mountain of European size, and that European people were grouped around this average peak and Japanese around this, and that these two mountains didn't overlap much. Well, if you think of a problem in that way, it's easier to solve.
That's extraordinary, though. I mean, I don't think most people's minds would figure that out at all. I mean, even now, even though you explained it, I find it very difficult to understand it, to be frank.
Try.
Well, later on.
Try it.
Nice
Try-
clip, I must say.
Try to imagine. Try to imagine. Try it, try it, try it. Even as a storyteller, any problem, be it at the stage of research, filming, scripting, editing, any problem, even in your life, try this visualization. Try imagining it like images. Science, like storytelling, begins with or is sometimes completed by imagination. Do you remember we read this in school textbooks? Auguste Kekule, the great scientist, the German organic chemist who discovered the structure of benzene. Do you remember the story behind it? He has been called the most supremely successful practitioner of creative intellectual skills. Kekule had been mulling over the structure of benzene for a long time. He'd been stuck somewhere, you know, like you get stuck with certain ideas. Then he had this dream vision of a snake eating its own tail. And there it was. The ring structure of benzene was discovered. You know, he also one day had a vision on the streets of London of dancing atoms and molecules, which led to his theory of structure. I'd like to show you his benzene structure so you can see how the imagination works here. Let me show you. Can you see this? This is where the imagination came, and many people allude there's an old Greek symbolism, a mystic symbolism of the, the serpent eating its own tail, from which they say that the imagination would find its links. And that there you have right in the center of this, the structure of benzene. Just imagine what Apple has taken, but this is much more than just that. Imagine. One second. Let's. Sorry. I seem to have lost my cursor. All right. There it is. It was hiding somewhere. Okay. So now, at the point of imagination, there have been many other scientists, and one such scientist was featured in this 6th International Science Film Festival of India, of which I've had the honor, thanks to y'all, of being a jury. The film Trials and Triumphs of G.N. Ramachandran, made on the legendary Indian scientist GNR, the first to discover the triple helical structure of collagen. The film, which was the opening film, it has an interviewee, perhaps a former student of GNR, who asked him how did he imagine the triple helical structure. Another scientist pulls his leg saying, "Arey, you know, you must have seen those women pulling the water from the well. Their ropes, the coil on the ropes, they must have led you to it." So GNR responded to the student saying that the vision came to him one night as he watched the night sky. The movement of the bodies, the celestial bodies, the stars, the moons, the constellations. So imagine, as a storyteller too, imagine. When you think of your story ideas, how to innovate on communicating them? Should we use animation or shadow puppetry? Should we have a simple story or some high-tech art to support it? Remember, if you're truly, truly imaginative, truly, truly desirous, creativity happens. No limitations can limit it. You don't have a great camera, you have a less great camera, na? Chalega. You don't even have a less great camera, you have pen and paper, na? Chalega. You don't even have pen and paper, but you have a voice, na? Dodega. Originally, all stories were told with just a voice under a tree by people who imagined, who believed in their story, and most importantly, in themselves. Like the greatest mathematician our world has had, Srinivas Ramanujan. I'm going to be playing you a clip from a biographical feature film recently made on him. I wonder if you guys have got a chance to see it. The Man Who Knew Infinity, brilliant film which has been made on him. Let me just play that for you.
In the meantime, you play, I just want to tell you that we are also, Vigyan Prasad is doing a series of talks, and
Yes.
on 22nd, we had completed that series and we played the clips from the very film you are talking about. And,
oh, you did? Ah.
Yes, and the film, the opening film you mentioned, I will request all who are listening and who are participant, they can go to our website, Vigyan Prasad YouTube channel, and they can watch the film.
Lovely. So here is what is the trailer of the film to give you an insight, and then we'll be talking a little bit more about it.
What do you see?
Sand.
Imagine if we could look so closely, we could see each grain, each particle. You see, there are patterns in everything.
Integrals, infinite series.
I've never seen anything like them. From an Indian clerk, ill-educated in Madras, I would very highly value any advice you give me.
Letter for you. Postmarked England.
Yours truly, S. Ramanujan.
What does the S stand for?
You can ask him yourself.
You intend to invite him here?
Don't forget me.
I could never.
Are you Ramanujan by chance? Oh, don't be intimidated. Great knowledge comes from the humblest of origins.
For the good of everybody, you should attend some lectures.
But I'm here to publish. The letter only contained a small sampling of my discoveries.
This will take a lifetime.
Maybe two.
We need proofs of your work.
But they are right, sir.
I hadn't completed that proof. How do you know?
I just do.
You don't pull a stunt like that in my class.
Now get out!
How do you know that theorem?
It came to me. These steps you want, I do not know how to do.
Where do you think you're going? This is our home.
Don't you know what I've given up to be here? I have nothing. You wanted to know how I get my ideas. God speaks to me.
There are no proofs. We're just supposed to take him at his word?
No, you're to take him at mine. Why do you do it?
Because I have to.
There are no proofs that can determine the outcome of matters of the heart. We are merely explorers of infinity in the pursuit of absolute perfection.
I owe you so much.
No, no, no. It's I who owe you.
Nice film. is anywhere the film can be seen? Or
Yes,
any?
yes, it can. There is a version of it on YouTube, which is not, as in it's not that good quality, but you can certainly see it.
And anywhere on any OTT channel or Netflix?
Unfortunately, not in India. I was trying to get that, but
Yeah.
sadly, it's not available in India. You
It
can, of
should be,
course.
because he belongs to India, so we should.
Can you
we should-
imagine? And
Yes.
the funny part is, we've not looked at making films. I mean, this also is a story which has been told. It's based on a book which has been written in the West. We haven't imagined making a film on our own genius. And
ma'am, we do have
yes,
few
please.
documentary films.
Yes, we
but yeah, feature film we don't have.
Yes,
In
yes.
that scale.
Yes, I'm talking about the grandeur
Yes,
with which this
yes,
comes from.
yes.
Anywhere it comes from, you know, such people also belong to a global tradition of intellect, of math, of science, of discovery, of inquiry. So, of course, not limiting him, but still he comes, this is his home. Yeah. And there's another thing which I would like to do while speaking about Ramanujan is that I would also like to put to rest, albeit a little briefly, the struggle which India has had all these decades between God and science. You know, when we were growing up, in school, we used to have these debates on topics like, is science better or is religion better? You know, when you're small, you have to take a side. But when you grow up, there's a realization which comes that the sides belong, since we're talking about imagination, let's try and imagine. Imagine a triangle. Any problem that you encounter at the earthly level is like a triangle. The base of the triangle has a left and a right, a this or a that, a correct or an incorrect, the base of the triangle. But if you look carefully, there is the top of the triangle. You also have a position that you can take by jumping at the top of the triangle for the clearest view, like, say, Sri Ramanujan. In the words of Ramanujan, who intuited, who had visions of 3,900 mathematical formulae, most of them way, way ahead of their times. All these he attributed and he thanked to the visions of his Isht Devi, Namagiri Thayar, a form of Mahalakshmi, and the dreams of her consort, Lord Narsimha. I quote him. He says, an equation for me has no meaning unless it expresses a thought of God.
What a thought. Like it gives me goosebump. Yeah.
There are many mystics who have further spoken about him. On when he used to pray, Ramanujan, he used to feel a tingling sensation in his third eye. And now those are energetics, perhaps not more suitable for this particular lecture, but there have been investigations into that from another point of view, Buddhism and mindfulness. There have been a lot of investigations around that.
Somewhere
from another
I
view.
also read that Vivekananda was also having the same
Seer.
kind of from his childhood.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing these facts. No one talks about these days.
Now, you see, now these are very important. And as an India which has come of age, I think we are really in a position to talk about it, because this is where you need to look at the word scientific temper, which incidentally is supposed to be a fundamental duty. I would like to ask, and it's a question which is open to all of us out here in your field of science, in my field of storytelling, in the lives of people of this land, of other lands. Did Ramanujan not have a scientific temper? Or, most importantly, is our perception of science too parochial, narrow, and too, I would add, orthodox? Ask quantum physicists. You know, this Nataraj, Lord Shiva. I'm sure all of you are connected with science, and you perhaps know that the world's largest particle physics laboratory, CERN in Switzerland, home to the world's largest Hadron Collider, has a 2-meter tall Shiva's Nataraj statue outside it. You want to take a look? Let's show you that. See that? And this is the plaque with the saying, the saying on the plaque is,
Beautiful.
hundreds of years ago, Indian artists created visual images of dancing Shivas in a beautiful series of bronzes. In our time, physicists have used the most advanced technology to portray the patterns of cosmic dance. The metaphor of the cosmic dance thus unifies ancient mythology, religious art, and modern physics. That's Fritjof Capra. He further says in his book, Tao of Physics, the dance of Shiva symbolizes the basis of all existence. At the same time, Shiva reminds us that the manifold forms in the world are not fundamental, but illusory and ever-changing. Modern physics has shown that the rhythm of creation and destruction is not only manifest in the turn of the seasons and the birth of all, in the birth and death of all living creatures, but is also the very essence of the inorganic. I guess that's the word. Inorganic matter, sorry. So, one minute, let me just get this. Yep. The question that we come to, these are the conversations which we need to start having even as storytellers of science of India. You know, a very beautiful, a postdoc student who was working at CERN, she also says that, and look at the poetry and how a scientist is describing it, something that many storytellers, filmmakers, journalists, Indian, shy away from. Perhaps because of our vision of science. Maybe we still consider science to be Newtonian and are not open to seeing the dance of the atoms or the movement, the delight that the quantum physicists here are talking about. So she says, in the light of the day, when CERN is teeming with life, she's talking about her institute. When CERN is teeming with life, she's talking about the statue of Shiva outside CERN. In the light of the day, when CERN is teeming with life, Shiva seems playful, reminding us that the universe is constantly shaking things up, remaking itself, and is never static. But by the night, when we have more time to contemplate the deeper questions, Shiva literally casts a long shadow over our work. It's like the shadows on Plato's cave. Shiv reminds me that we still don't know the answer to one of the biggest questions presented by the universe, and that every time we collide the beams, we must take the cosmic balance sheet into account. Beautiful. Science, in the way I see it, offers an openness to wonder, which is also the basis of all mystical religious thought. In the Bhagavad Puran, Narad Muni says that the worldly empirical knowledge, to know the limitations of that, is essential preparation for receiving absolute knowledge. So imagine, play with this world, its knowledge, stories of its knowledge, and the limitations it poses. Play with these. These stories of creative imagination range from higher intuition to dream states to reverie. Kukule, Ramanujan, Dmitri Mendeleev. Then there was, if you all remember, this person who got Nobel Prize for Medicine, Otto Lowy, Don Newman. They were engineers, Paul Horwitz, Alan Huang. like Bronowski says, they've all used imagination. Try it, try it, try it. But also remember, there is something which Kukule says. He says, let's learn to dream, gentlemen, and then perhaps we shall find the truth. But let us beware of publishing our dreams until they have been examined by conscious understanding. So there is the word vivek, which is extremely important. Imagine vivekfully, which brings us to our third dimension of science narratives, which is Vishay Gyan, the domain knowledge. Now, Indian thought understands knowledge at two levels. One is the knowledge of the objects, their interrelationships, what Narad Muni was talking about, the empirical knowledge, the knowledge of the worldly material manifestations which are impermanent, sansar. The other knowledge is of the absolute unchanging self, the total, you can call it consciousness if you like. Now the word Vigyan is often the word given in our texts to worldly knowledge, and Gyan is the word offered for absolute knowledge. Vigyan is about a Vishay, an object. So in that sense, Vishay Gyan, your domain knowledge, is Vigyan. Now, while the spirit of science as a subject is imbibed in storytelling via a passionate, playful, imaginative approach, spirit is not enough. You need a body of the subject. That has to be translated in your films. Because a spirit without a body is, well, it's a bhoot. It's a ghost. Unless, of course, you want to make a Ramsay Brothers film, which I guess we are not intending to make. The body of the subject means the knowledge domain you choose for your film. You are needed. What is needed of you, what is required of you, is to immerse yourself in that. From my own life, let me give you an example. The films which I have made, let's say on climate change, or on Chilika, which Sabyasachi has seen, they have taken me 3 to 4 years to make. Why? I mean, a news report with perhaps the same information could take a few hours to create.
And generally, all these documentary filmmakers do, they go and they shoot in 3 days and they come back. Very superficial.
Absolutely. Because that's not film. I mean, for a film, you have to do justice. It's not propaganda. It's not a preconceived notion. It's storytelling. You take time because understanding your Vishay takes time. Look at the scientist. Look at a fisherman. He takes so much of time to learn. How can I make a film on him, on the situation in a lake which is so vast, in 3 months? I can't do that. I need to understand. The knowledge has to not just be indirect knowledge, go to a few folks, ask them, interview them, their versions, finished, khatam, over. It has to be made your own direct knowledge. You have to dive deep into it so that once you come out of it, you become the subject. And where does that show? It shows in your edit. How you weave together, let's say, the text and the context, the weaving of it, that's where that shows. Let's say Vishay Gyan means it's not just surfing the waves, kacha pakka, kabhi haan, kabhi na, but it's scuba diving. You dive in deep. You may not be the scientist or the innovator, but damn, you're the storyteller. You need to have an even more detailed knowledge so you can give them a perspective that even they perhaps have never imagined. You have to imbibe the knowledge, something like you digest good, nutritious food. And then in turn, after digestion, you sing it, paint it, dance it, tell it, narrate it. a well-digested third dimension of narrative. For your job as a filmmaker is not to mystify, but to simplify. And you can only simplify what you yourself have understood deeply. To decode something, you need to first understand the code. And decode, you must. For your story must reach not just the funder, the already convinced, the already in awe. Your story must reach that one who is open, but perhaps has no idea about the subject. It must carry the, how to put it, the honesty that attempts to draw such a person in. That honesty, I believe it comes from Vishay Gyan, your knowledge of the domain, in-depth research. Iska koi tod nahi hai, no option. You know, there's another thing which John Donne, an English poet, he'd written this that very beautifully. This was, if I remember correctly, the 1600s, the early 1600s, he'd written. In order for a mystery to have a universal significance, it must be made comprehensible to ordinary mortals. I am getting to the fourth dimension of storytelling, but I would just like to check with Mr. Sabyasachi. Are you there, Mr. Sabyasachi?
Yes, I'm there.
We have time?
Although we have all the time. Certainly we can.
All right. So we are in fourth. They are fifth. I was coming to seven, but I put it down to some other time. I'm just going to be talking about 5 dimensions. So right now we are on the fourth dimension of storytelling.
Actually, earlier we had only 1 hour of time, but we can stretch this to 20-25 minutes.
Yes, and I must admit I was the one to insist on only an hour from Mr. Kapoor saying, "No, 1 ghanta kafi hoga."
So
the fourth is mine.
कोई problem नहीं है मैम. We can go till 1:30. Generally,
surely,
we do it till
surely. Yes, I remember that. So the fourth dimension of storytelling, and here I'm going to use a somewhat surprising word. I'm going to call this dimension Shraddha, the journey of openness. You know, science begins with a hypothesis. Say the earth rotates around the sun, a belief, or say the sun does not rotate around the earth, a doubt, a hypothesis, open to being tested, to being tried. A scientist then goes about experimenting, attempting to prove his belief or his doubt, something he has Shraddha over, a belief on his own hypotheses. Shraddha is a belief on yes or no pending understanding. Shraddha is an enthusiasm you have about your ideas around the subject, which are in the process of experimentation or in the process of filming, open to change, depending on the results or the process which you witness what life unravels. You know, when you make a promotional film or an ad film or an advocacy film, this criteria does not hold. And here I must caution you, the genre of documentaries does have as historical lineage, its own historical lineage, propaganda films, i.e., a pre-decided conclusion you are given as a framework. So, like in ad films, sell lollipops to the audience. Convince them they need that lollipop. Use what you want to get them to buy the lollipops. Now, that is NOT, not the storytelling we are speaking of. That storytelling is not at all in the spirit of science. The spirit of science is a journey of seeking, to uncover, to discover with a big, vast mind and an even bigger heart what we find in this adventure called life. This dimension of narrative is the openness to journeying, the shraddha towards the journey of understanding, using the medium of filmmaking to understand, to test your hypotheses. I'll give you an example from my own filmmaking. When I filmed Earth Witness 2011, my film on climate change, I wanted to truly understand what was going on. What had happened was that the words climate change had numbed me so much as a human being. You know, you see them everywhere, that I had stopped responding to them in my heart. I mean, I was climate change, theek hai, hoga. So I journeyed to 4 ecological zones in India, to people who lived close to nature, those who could hear nature speak, much more than me and an urban city, concrete life dweller. I went with a belief, a shraddha in my journey, a hypothesis that something is not right. I want to understand what. I just asked one question to all my protagonists. The Bega from Chhattisgarh, Chakisan Naga from Nagaland, Rabadi from Kutch, and a lovely farmer, mystic farmer from Sundarbans. I asked them, what do you hear nature say? This is what they said. I'm going to share with you a short clip from Shukdev Da, who speaks about what he heard nature say. Over to Shukdev Da.
সেটা বলতে চাইছে এই যে আমার যতটা জঙ্গল দরকার ততটা আমার ফিরিয়ে দাও। সেটা বলেছিলাম যে আমার যতটা খাদ্য দরকার যদি আমি না পাই তাহলে আমি খাদ্যের জন্য হয় লড়াই করব, না চুরি করব, যাই কিছু করব, ধাক্কা মারবই। ঠিক তেমনিভাবে বারবার সিগন্যাল দিচ্ছে এই যে বন্যা, খরা, ধস বা ভূমিকম্প, এটাই প্রমাণ করে যে তোমরা কিছু না কিছু আমার ক্ষতি করছো, কিছু না কিছু আমার ক্ষতি করছো, না হলে আমি তোমাকে ধাক্কা মারবো কেন এমনি এমনি? আমাকে আঘাত দেওয়ার ফলে আমি তোমাকে আঘাত দিতে চেষ্টা করছি। অর্থাৎ এই যে এলাকাটা আমরা আছি এটা কিন্তু বিপদ সংকুল এলাকা, তার জঙ্গল সীমানার ভিতরে আমরা আছি। বারবার ধাক্কা করে বলছে হঠাৎ আমার জঙ্গল এখানে তৈরি। এটি হচ্ছে কারণ, প্রকৃতি বলছে তো। আমি নৌকায় বসছি বা কেউ ফুটো করে দিল তালাটা, তাহলে নৌকা ডুবে যেতে পারে। আমরা যারা প্যাসেঞ্জার এর উপরে আছি, ফুটো করে জল তুলছি, কলকারখানার ধোঁয়া ছাড়ছি, ভিতরে প্রাকৃতিক গ্যাস তুলে নিচ্ছি।
Beautiful clip.
Shukdev Da. And, you as a storyteller are on this journey, both as a passenger and as a witness. And this witness, the Sakshi, I will weave this in with the last dimension for this lecture, the 5th dimension of storytelling, which is Prishtabhumi, or the background. I'd like you to recall the base of the knowledge triangle. Remember? So at the top, and then it goes down, and the horizontal. The horizontal is this, that, left, right, correct, incorrect. Now, just imagine this, keep this imagination with you. In our times, 2020, COVID Kal, stories of science are told in two ways. There is a dualistic narrative of the good and the evil. First, let's see how science is seen as the good, the savior, the solution of everything, including corona. AI, artificial intelligence, wow, the ease of things, the fact that we are able to have conversations, technology, cleanest way. No human messy things which happen on the earth. The scientists, they are like the priests in white lab coats, something like what you'd say, automatons, living a life in the laboratories, away from any earthly context. Most of them are portrayed as living only the highest of the highest forms of truth. Auspiciousness, beauty, Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. The other way science is imagined or spoken of is as the evil, the cause of all bad, the warfare, the virus, the gain of function, tinkering around, genetic modification, climate change, war machines, nuclear proliferation. The scientist, mad, working for evil political masters. Mad, mutually assured destruction. The dualistic narrative. As storytellers with a vivid sense of imagination of this triangle, I invite you to pop to the triangle top. Now, watch carefully our collective history, our present, science and its application, which is technology, like religion and its application, spiritual practices. Both are tools, extremely powerful tools. They can be used to serve any purpose. Religion, rituals, festivals, celebrations, meditation practices to discover peace, truth, beauty, harmony. Or religion, to force convert, to unleash fanaticism, hatred, terrorism, for every other belief, every other form, only I am right, you are wrong. Science, nuclear to create electricity, or science, nuclear to bomb some 80,000 people to death within minutes, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Technology, internet, to spread education, to connect, have conversations like what we're doing, or internet, to learn how to create bombs, to spread terror, pornography, human trafficking, God knows what and all. Huh? How do we use them? A human dilemma and a personal value choice. To this, I would again like you to listen to an amazing insight from Brunowski. Okay.
And during the war, many scientists were faced.
Sorry, I'll just give a context. He's talking about the war. He's talking about Nazi Germany. He's talking about when the atom bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, Nagasaki. He is talking about the choice which scientists had in the creation of the atom bomb. And you will see a very honest account as a scientist that he's giving of the whole time. He's giving a context to it. Listen very, very carefully.
And during the war, many scientists were faced with a very simple and brutal question, which is, do I feel about the civilization in which I work strongly enough to do anything to resist the Nazi threat to make a bomb first? And we all felt yes about that. All of us, and I had no doubt that all of us would do that again. We felt quite certain that to allow what was then going on in Central Europe what we had seen films of in Poland and Russia, to become normal over the world was something which we must resist by all technical means which we possessed. That we would be traitors to the intelligence we had been provided for, to turn around and say to Mr. Winston Churchill, I know you want the bomb, but you're a warmonger. I am a peaceful man. I would rather go to jail. I think an individual can say that. But I don't think that you can blame an individual who says, no, I can't say that. The questions arise about what happens at the moment when other people make up their minds to drop the bomb, because I don't have to tell you that no scientist was asked about dropping the bomb. And those who knew it was going to be dropped, Szilard, Wigner, the people who signed the Wigner Memorandum, they were very much against it. They said that dropping the bomb at that stage in the war was a mistake. But you see, they wouldn't have felt that if it had been a crucial question about dropping it on Berlin at an earlier stage of the war, if we had been threatened by it. They're terrible dilemmas. I mean, that's what morality is about. That's what being a human being is about. You are faced with questions of value to which there are no numerical answers. Never think that you can write down an equation which, at the end of which, that's fine. I have now proved loyalty to my country is more important than loyalty to the scientific tradition. No, no, that's always got to be a personal choice. Well,
That's always got to be a personal choice. The dilemma. As storytellers, narrative creators, firstly, it's very important to take the triangle top view. You know, that helps you get a context, a background to science, technology, the subject you're speaking on. And remember that on Earth, nothing exists without a context. Even science and scientists, they happened because of a certain culture, society, politics. It supported that happening. A discovery happens because of that. It comes from a context. To every text, there is a context. The first factory in the world was a cotton factory in England. The technological innovation, industrial revolution, right? The basis of it, ginning machine, carding machines, the beginning of the world as we live it today, aeroplanes, railways, everything. It changed our world forever. The development, the progress, we are reaping the benefits out of it. But that too came from a context, that of colonization, from a brutal exploitation of nations like India. A context, a background, a perspective. Kuch right, kuch wrong, all of it together. That is what life is. In storytelling, fiction, non-fiction, short, long, anything, context is where you lead the audience hand in hand, literally like children to the top of the triangle, where they can get the best view of the subject, sitting on the Mount Everest and getting the view of the world. This, that, and the other. Mind you, in the Indian tradition, there is a strong current of storytelling where the author, the teller, is an integral part of the told. Most clearly, you can see this in our itihas, our epic Mahabharata. Maharishi Vedvyas is also a character in the story. He fathers Pandu, Dhritarashtra, Vidur. He is the grandfather of Pandav and Kaurav. This is sort of one way to look at it. Another way I can speak of it is, and perhaps that's more useful for us, is that the told is also the teller, the eternal witness, resting in the absolute unchanging consciousness, the supreme knowledge.
Beautiful.
In the Indian way, that's called the Sakshi, right? So in the Indian way, the whole idea, the art of storytelling, the science of storytelling, because I extrapolate it to science storytelling, is to realize that on Earth, in the world, there is only duality, the base of the triangle. long is resting at the top of the triangle. Now, maybe with a tall glass of lassi, listening to some bhangra music and dancing a cheers to everyone. Now, I'd like to end this with, again, my favorite Dr. Brunovsky and this lovely interview of him, summing everything that I have said up. I'll share that with you.
And ma'am, after that, we'll take
questions. Certainly, certainly.
So please kindly write down your questions. I have started receiving few questions. So if you have any question, please write it down.
Just listen.
I'm terribly sad that, 30 years from now I shall be dead, because, not because anybody will miss me, but because I will miss them. Because so many more marvelous things will be known. Now, should you listen to me? Yes. Yes, you should. Not because you have to believe any single thing that I say, but because you have to be pleased that there are people who have led happy and complete lives, who feel that they can speak out of a full heart and a full mind, all in the same breath.
That is why you must listen. And that is why also you must tell stories of science, because there are people like those who have led full lives, who've led happy lives, and who speak with honesty and a fullness of their heart. That is why you have to be a storyteller of science or any form of seeking. So over to y'all. Questions ready, responses, interaction, puri tayar.
One question is from Gaurav. He asked, if no scientists want to drop a bomb, then why they make these fatal equipments which put the life of every person in the limelight of fear?
Well, every time I hear Dr. Brunovsky speak about that, I always remember Bhagavad Gita. When the context of Arjun standing there and Krishna telling him that you have to war. There are certain situations which are, of course, personal choices. And like he said, to deter Germany, according to him, his time, to deter Germany from the Holocaust, from carrying on with the Holocaust at that time, they had to come up with a deterrent. A nuclear weapon was the answer. For them, it was a value choice. And what our people back in history have done, it's very difficult for us to sit today and judge them. It's a trend which we find all over the world because we are not there. We can only judge our times and we can only judge ourselves. Very difficult to look back and say anything else. I hope my voice is still clear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Clear. And Akanksha, one thing I also think that when they were inventing these kind of atomic power, then it's not only they thought of that they have to destroy something, because destruction and construction is the two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
So the mobile phone, it has both the aspect of this. So yes, you were 100% correct.
To sum it up, if I can say, सब चीजें ना बहुत ही powerful होती हैं as a tool. उनका कौन प्रयोग लाता है as scientists, as seekers, as creators of even a story, you can create very powerful stories, but उनका इस्तेमाल कैसे किया जाएगा वो आपके पास में नहीं है. एंड इसकी तो आप सब लोग इसके विटनेस हैं.
So I think there is some connection problem from Akanksha's side. So I'm really sorry for this thing, as we are already at the end of the this dialogue. Um, One question from Surya Narayanji. SR Surya Narayan Rao, we can get a recorded version of your amazing interview to show to young student people like you must be training teacher. Surya Narayanji, yes, you can have all these master classes recording later on Vigyan Prasar's YouTube channel. We are going to put all these master classes and webinars on Vigyan Prasar's YouTube channel. So you certainly can see later on. So I will request you to after post festival, you can go and you can watch the master classes. The films won't be available there after 25th. So please go watch these mind-provoking films. The opening film about which Akanksha was talking is also there. It's a must-watch film. So please go and watch the film. And now one another question was from VJ, like science versus religion, is fiction versus non-fiction also overdone? Does Sakshi see a difference? Thank you. Beautiful talk. By the way, we are hearing from California. Thank you, VJ, for joining us from California. It's nice to know that people from US is also watching. I am extremely sorry that due to some technical reason, Akanksha is not able to give this answer. So yeah, probably in future we will have another talk with Akanksha, and then probably you can ask this question to her. Once again, thank you very much. Akanksha, you are back?
Sorry, I'm back. There was a little drop in connection. The internet just collapsed. Fortunately, not during the lecture.
Okay.
Yes.
So we have one question from VJC is watching the talk from California, and she want to know, like science versus religion, is fiction versus non-fiction also overdone? Does Sakshi see a difference?
Absolutely. I think every story is a story, and it really depends upon the teller. And you can find that today happening a lot, because there are a lot of people who are using fiction styled as documentary. So the cameras are really raw and rugged. You can't even make out that fiction is being shot. So while documentary is attempting to look like fiction, fiction is attempting to look like documentary. I think the genre of documentary has changed a lot. Like I said, it began from propaganda films for war, and now